I think if we look at the cost structure of building e-fuels, most of the costs are really going into the green hydrogen to build the synthetic molecules, the kerosene, the aviation kerosene, diesel, gasoline, or whatever, requires a lot of hydrogen. And with these being e-fuels, it's necessarily electrolytic, renewable green hydrogen. So if you look at the cost pie, we need capital equipment, we need electrolyzers, we need a chemical reactor plant. But actually, a lot of the money is being spent on a big wind farm or a big solar park to make all of those green electrons. And what that means is that the best e-fuels projects are going to be done in locations around the world where those green electrons are cheapest, meaning we've got ideal wind and solar conditions, or we've got abundant hydropower, for example. So really, I think for me, the biggest challenge with e-fuels is lots of green electrons, low-cost green hydrogen, and then there's a number of technological chemical reaction pathways that we can consider to make sustainable kerosene, gasoline, and diesel.
Sure, thanks, Steve. That's fantastic. Good to get your independent perspective. And now perhaps I could open that up to Liz and Praz. Praz, you mentioned funding towards the end of our discussion there. Is that one of the biggest challenges, or is it something else for you?
It is a big challenge, but I think it's exactly related to what Steve was talking about, which is and I think this is something for green molecules more broadly, right? So how do we live symbiotically with the grid? And one of the things we're focused on is how do you use excess renewable energy, which isn't going to go anywhere, to then create these molecules like the green hydrogen that could then go into green electrofuels. And so I think yeah, Steve touched on some important points, which is we can't drive the costs down until we get the capital, but then the capital is not going to come necessarily until the costs drive down. So how do you think about innovations around how to source the cheapest green hydrogen possible, the cheapest green electrons possible? This can be going to the right locations and selecting the right sites. Could be working with governments as well. For example, we have a MOU that's public with the South Australian government, who are one of the most forward-thinking in this area, and who actually invested almost $250 million into a green hydrogen plant. So there's interesting locations around the world, both in terms of just the cost, but also potentially policy support. But yeah, I'd say capital is a big hurdle to sort of overcome, but it's not irrational what investors are looking at, right? Because ultimately this sector is quite nascent and biofuels are cheaper, and in some places even being mandated. And so they're looking purely from a cost perspective. And really the challenge now is to companies like ourselves to help drive costs down significantly through various innovations, be they technical or financial or otherwise.
So Liz, let's come to you with our other kind of real world case study, or that boots on the ground field. Do you agree with everything that Steve and Praz have said?
Yes, completely agree. And I'd say one more thing to add that we've been really focused on is the bankability of our offtake agreements and how to structure the projects to attract project finance, because that's really what's going to get the industry at scale is, opening those pockets for infrastructure investment to really leverage into the scale of these assets. Fossil fuels today don't typically contract on long-term fixed or floor price contracts for offtake, but that's what's needed to really advance some of these assets and attract the project finance required to grow the industry. So I think we've seen a lot of support from folks that are really leaning in and doing things that are a little outside of their comfort zone, but they are really eager to get hands on this new innovative fuel. And even with all of the supply and biofuels and everything else in the market today, we're still short in terms of where the supply is coming in versus where the demand is from our customers. So all promising and good problems to have, but being in the first in this space is brings with it these challenges for all of us to figure out together.